Mr. Nicholas, it's really a pleasure having you today to speak about the probably the withdrawal of the United States from the NATO. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure. But I doubt, we'll discuss this, whether the United States will withdraw. It will do damage to NATO, severe damage, but it won't withdraw because uh, the United States gains huge advantage from NATO.
Theoretically, let's say, like, how will the US withdrawal, let's say, impact the NATO's actual military capabilities if the withdrawal happen? Like, especially in logistics, let's say air support, satellites, intelligence surveillance. Like, as you said, as you mentioned, it will really cost Europe heavily. Uh, to like, it relies a lot on the USA, as you mentioned.
Withdrawal can take several forms. Either complete withdrawal, the NATO treaty allows withdrawal on notification, and the withdrawal will take 1 year. And under the treaty, it's perfectly permissible to withdraw from the Washington Treaty of 1949. But what I think will happen is not complete withdrawal from the United States from NATO, but it will withdraw certain key capabilities, military capabilities, as you mentioned, possibly withdrawal of key intelligence, key air defense, key surveillance, key intelligence assets, and also withdraw the naval assets from around the Mediterranean, or air assets to concentrate on the Far East and Middle East if it's permitted.
Will Europe be realistically be able to counter, let's say, for theoretically, like if there was a threat probably from Russia directly after the American support is no more, especially in the short term, and especially what happening now in Ukraine.
Yes, I think you hit the nail on the head. The short term. The problem for the Europeans is that they've invested so much in NATO, and they spend a lot of money in NATO. They've invested a lot of capabilities, assets, and so on, but those assets are locked into NATO. NATO in the military structure is directed and controlled by the Americans, the United States. There's an American Supreme Allied Commander. And it's very difficult for the Europeans to extract their own capabilities to act in European interests and autonomously in their own name. It's
Mhm.
because Europe doesn't have the same command structure. It doesn't have the structures to act outside NATO. And so Europe will have huge difficulty in the short term to construct a collective defense and deterrence. But I believe that the Europeans can do it. They they don't need the Americans, but we've been so integrated with the Americans.
It's a big challenge because the United States actually contributes more than 70% of the NATO budget. Do you think this
Well,
is
that's
like
what
a
this is. Forgive me, but this is, I mean, the Trump propaganda. Um,
so these
and
numbers probably might not be true?
well, it's true in the global sense because the United States is a global player. That figure of 70% includes everything that the United States contributes to security in the Far East, for example.
Mhm.
If you want to know the figure of the NATO structure, for example, the uh, um, the headquarters and so on, the United States only contributes 16.2%.
Mhm.
The Germans contribute 16.2%. The British and the French contribute 11% each, and so on, according to the GDP of their countries. And for NATO as an organization, as a structure, the Americans are huge beneficiaries. But the 70% is the United States as a global actor, not
Mhm.
in Europe, not expenditure in Europe. And Trump has a lot of flaws. Uh, and one of his flaws is that he repeats lies so often that people like you, me, believe in them. But if you unpack,
Exaggerates.
yeah, he exaggerates, and even the European leaders believe that 70% is correct, but it's not correct.
So do you think the gap that will the USA will leave it's manageable by the NATO and the NATO allies?
Well, as you said, it's not manageable in the short term because what Trump will do is spring the reductions, the withdrawals on the Europeans, and they'll be scrambling around to fill the gaps.
Mhm.
If it's done in a planned, orderly way, and some analysts say it will take 10 years, but if it's done in a planned, orderly way with the Americans in those 10 years contributing to defense and security, but withdrawing, I think it can happen. But the problem is Trump is turning this into a antagonistic process, not a cooperative process. And he's going to punish the Europeans for their lack of support in the Iranian war.
Let's talk about the other side of this theory. Let's say, if do you think Russia or China will exploit this gap if the US actually withdraw from NATO?
In some ways, yes, but with US withdrawal from NATO or withdrawal of key capabilities from NATO will leave a power vacuum in
Mhm.
Europe. And even if the Russians and the Chinese are benevolent actors, which they're not, but if they even they were, then they will automatically have more influence in Europe and its periphery. That because there is a gap. There is for 80 years, uh, Russia has been contained by the United States. China is growing in military capability. And if the Europeans feel that the Americans are abandoning them, automatically they will want to be at least friendly in a commercial sense, particularly to China.
Mhm.
Russia is a sort of a problem because of a sort of real deep antagonism. But China, particularly commercially, will step in to fill the gap.
So speaking of Russia, do you think this withdrawal might be like impact like the war now on Ukraine? Like might be like Russians see it as a peace message, like they probably withdraw the areas that they taken.
No, no, Russia is adamant and um, uh, intent on finishing this war to the benefit of Russia and to the disbenefit of Europe and the United States. Their objective, broad objective on starting this war was to change the balance of power in Europe, to not let the European Union or NATO or the Americans dictate their security in Europe. And this war in Iran actually feeds into that objective, because the United States is distracted. The United States is even friendlier to Russia than the Europeans are. And this war will encourage the Russians to go out for 100% of their aims.
So you think like the, let's say, occupied like lands that Russia already took from Ukraine on the borders, they will not probably withdraw from it. Like they will take it as a good deed.
They will occupy more. The problem for the Russians is how much do they take? How much can they control without mobilizing more troops? So we're getting to the end of the war in Ukraine, maybe this year. But the Russians have to decide what territory they want, or whether they'll make a peace deal with the United States in order to legitimize their gains.
So do you think that the withdrawal will probably hurt the credibility of the USA like commitment to other allies? Like they will say like we're allies to the USA, but now they're withdrawing from the NATO. How the trust and the credibility will be?
Yes, of course. And you in the Gulf region are feeling that impact severely. Yes, like the Europeans. I mean, we're in the same situation. We depend on the might and the force of the United States, but we also depend on its rationality. And the Middle East, Europe, Far East with Japan, Korea. I mean, Japan and Korea are thinking of developing nuclear weapons, for example. So harmed has been the reputation and the commitment of the United States. And what we've not talked about is the damage to the United States itself by withdrawing from NATO and withdrawing capabilities from NATO, because the United States and the Pentagon particularly sees Europe as a vital stepping stone to its operations in the rest of the world, operations and defense of the rest of the world. And I think at some stage, the military will protest about the American military will protest about the damage President Trump is doing to their own objectives, their own carefully conceived plans and arrangements.
So do you think there will be another alliances that might be formed after the United States withdrawal?
No. The one alliance which, in embryo could form is the European Union. It has the ambition, the objective of a common defense policy. They're doing everything they can to develop their military capabilities. But elsewhere, I think it's the end of the alliance system after the Second World War. China and Russia are not allies. They're partners, they have friendly relations, military exercises, but they will not sign to defend each other in the event of an attack. They want their own freedom, freedom of maneuver. So the Europeans will develop their military capabilities, but the Europeans are not united. And without the United States, there'll be a resurgence of European antagonisms and differences of interest. So even the EU is not guaranteed to be effectively replace the United States.
So lastly, I would like to ask you about even if this withdrawal happened and as you said, the capabilities and logistics and weapons and defense bases, like all from the US. What about the weapon development, weapon research, logistics, and development of new weapons, let's say? Can the EU alone manage to do this?
Yes, and this is one of the problems from the United States. They want to punish, or President Trump wants to punish and discipline Europe because of its lack of support and he calls it freeloading. But the Europeans are saying, well, we want to develop our own defense industry. And the EU, despite it not being an effective defense organization, the EU does have effective means for encouraging European-only defense industry by giving loans, generous loans, to EU countries in order to buy European weapons. And so the Americans will, if they withdraw, if they downgrade their alliance with Europe, the American industry will find it difficult over time to penetrate what will increasingly be a protective European defense market for defense equipment.
Mr. Nicholas, it was actually very informative. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It was really informative, really. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Walid. And anytime, it's always a pleasure to discuss with such an intelligent and knowledgeable person of insight, journalist,
Thank
and
you.
so on.
Thank you so much. Thank you.